It was at her own office Christmas party, with a plastic cup of punch going warm in my hand, that a man from my wife's company clapped me on the shoulder and asked how I was enjoying having her home every night now that the regional travel had ended a couple of years back. He said it kind, just making conversation, a co-worker being friendly to the quiet husband in the corner. And I smiled and said something. I do not even remember what, because the floor of the whole room had just tilted under me. Because my wife had been telling me, for 2 years, that she was on the road 3 nights a week. I did not spill my punch. I did not make a scene at her company party with her boss 10 feet away. I am a cabinet maker. I have spent 30 years learning to read wood, and the first thing the trade teaches you is that a board can come off the rack looking dead straight and dressed and flawless, and have a check running down the grain on the inside that you cannot see from any angle. And you will not find it until the day you drive a screw into it, and it splits the whole length of the board in your hands. For 2 years I had been holding a board I thought was true. That co-worker, with his friendly question, was the screw going in. And I felt the grain split right down the middle of my life, quiet, where nobody at that party could see it. Stay with me, because what I did over the next few months, instead of what I wanted to do in that warm, loud room, is the whole reason I am telling you this. I had been the proudest husband in the parish of my wife's big career. I had held down the house and the kids and my shop so she could fly, and it turned out I had been holding the ladder she climbed to get away from me. This is not a story about revenge. I never raised my voice or my hand. It is a story about a supportive man who got made a fool of, kept his head, and made sure the truth and the law set it right. I am 48 years old. I build cabinets and furniture in a shop behind my house in Louisiana. The kind of work where a man's hands tell his whole history, and a piece you built right outlives you. I have been married for 21 years, 2 kids, a boy who is 16 and a girl who is 13. If you are out there tonight, and you ever found out you were the last to know something a whole room already knew, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I have a feeling there are more of us than anybody says. Let me tell you about the trust first, because in this one, the trust is the whole wound. I married a vet when I was 27. She was ambitious in a way I never was. I wanted a good shop, steady work, my kids raised right, a porch to sit on at the end of the day. She wanted more, bigger, and I loved that about her. I truly did. When she got on with a company that had her moving up, regional this and regional that, I was happy for her, proud. And here is the part that I have to make you understand, because it is the whole knife of it. I supported her, completely. When the job started asking for travel, I said go. I said I have got the kids, I have got the house. You go, be great. I cut back my own shop hours so I could do the school runs and the suppers and the homework and the doctor visits, because somebody had to be home, and I wanted it to be me so she could rise. For 2 years, I was mother and father both, 3 nights a week, and I did it gladly, because I thought I was building something with her. I bragged about her at the diner, my wife, the regional manager, traveling all over, while I held down the home front. I was proud to be the man behind a woman going places. I was holding the ladder. That is the thing I have had to sit with. Every night I put our kids to bed alone so she could be on the road was a night I had handed her, free and clear, to do what she was really doing. My support was not support. It was the cover. The best alibi a cheating spouse ever had is a trusting husband who is so proud of her career that he tucks the kids in and tells her to go shine. I gave her that for 2 years and I called it love. And it was love on my end. That is what makes it the kind of wound that does not close clean. I want you to understand what holding that home actually was, because the word support is too small for it. It was learning to braid a 13-year-old's hair off a video on my phone because her mama was in another city. It was sitting in the school parking lot at pickup with the other moms, the only daddy in the line 3 nights a week, and not minding, because I was proud to be the one there. It was suppers and homework and fevers and the science fair and the recital. 2 years of the 10,000 small, holy things that raising kids actually is, done by a man who was glad to do them so the woman he loved could become who she wanted to be. I let my own shop go quiet to do it. I turned down work. I told good customers I was booked when the truth was I was needed at home, because I had decided her rising mattered more than my backlog. There is no resentment in any of that, and I want to be clear about it, because the resentment people will expect me to feel is not the wound. The wound is that I would do every bit of it again for the right person. And I did it for someone who was using the time I bought her to lie in a hotel bed with a man named Lance. You can give the realest love there is and have it turned into an alibi. That is the splinter that does not work its way out. Let me tell you how the grain had been splitting, the signs I read as something good. She was happy. That is the cruel part. For 2 years she came home from her trips lit up, energized, better dressed, laughing more. And I thought, look at her. She has found her thing. She is thriving. And I was so glad to see it that I never once asked what was really feeding it. The phone, of course. Face down, a passcode, glued to her hand on the nights she was home, which I told myself was just a busy executive staying on top of things. The trips that stretched a day longer than the schedule, the new clothes, the way she stopped wanting me to come along to the regional functions, said it was work, not a place for spouses, when for years she had wanted me on her arm. And the way she started, gently, to talk about my shop like it was small. Cute, she called it once. My little cabinet shop. A word she had never used in 18 years, and I let it go because a man whose wife is flying does not begrudge her looking down a little. I told myself that too. I told myself a lot of things, because the alternative was driving a screw into the grain and finding the split. There were sharper splinters too, the ones I pulled out and threw away without looking at. A coworker's name, Lance. That came up a little too easily, and then, when I asked an ordinary question about him, got brushed away a little too fast. A hotel reward statement that came to the house once and that she intercepted from the mail with a speed I noticed and forgot. A second set of nice luggage I never saw her use for a trip I knew about. The night she came home from a supposed 3-day conference, smelling faintly of a cologne that was not mine and not anything she wore. And how she had a shower before she even said hello to the kids. I caught all of it, and I filed all of it under "she is tired, she is busy, she is thriving," because every one of those readings let me keep believing the board was true. A man does not want to drive the screw. The not wanting is exactly how the split gets 2 years to run the length of the wood before you ever find it. And then a friendly co-worker drove the screw for me at a Christmas party. And the board split the whole length, and there was no unseeing it. That night, after we got home, after I told her I was tired and went out to the shop instead of to bed, I sat among the wood I had not touched in earnest in 2 years. The wood I had set aside to raise our kids so she could travel, and I did the thing my trade had taught me. When you find a split in a board, you do not panic and you do not throw the whole board out in a temper. You set it down. You take the measure of it, the whole length of the damage, before you decide what can be saved and what cannot. So I sat in my own shop in the cold, and I let the first wave of it pass through me. And then I got very quiet and very steady, and I started to think. I will be honest with you about that night in the shop, because the steadiness did not come easy, and I do not want to lie and say it did. There was a long stretch of it where I just sat on a stool with my hands flat on the workbench, the bench my own father gave me, and I shook. Not from cold. 21 years. 2 kids I had raised half by myself so she could fly. The diner where I had bragged on her, where every man in that town now probably knew what I had been too proud and too trusting to see. I thought about all the school pickups, all the bedtimes, all the nights I had told the kids, "Mama is doing important work. Be proud of her." And I felt like the biggest fool in the parish. And somewhere in the middle of that, I picked up a hand plane, just to hold something true, and I ran it down a board. One long curl of pine coming up clean, and the sound of it, and the rightness of it, put me back in my own hands. That is the thing about a trade. When everything a man believed turns out to be a split board, the work itself, the plain, honest work he can still do well, is the thing that holds him up. I planed that board until my breathing was even. Then I went inside and slept 2 hours and got the kids up for school and made their lunches, because they were mine to make, and they always had been. The next morning, after the kids were at school, I went and saw a lawyer. And what that lawyer told me is the most useful thing I can hand you tonight, so write it down. Do not confront. Not yet. Get quiet. Get your papers in order. And learn the law of your own state before she and her lawyer teach it to you the hard way. The lawyer was a man in the parish seat who had been doing this for almost 30 years, and he had a calm about him that put the floor back level under me. I told him everything. The party, the coworker, the 2 years of travel that had ended 2 years ago, the happy glow I had been so glad to see. And then he told me some things about Louisiana that I did not know. And I'm going to share the shape of them. Though I want to be clear, I am no lawyer, and your state runs its own way. And Louisiana runs more its own way than just about anywhere. So you need your own attorney for your own life. This is just my story. He told me Louisiana is a community property state, which means most of what a married couple builds belongs to both of them, 50-50, no matter whose name earned it. And that fault, even adultery, does not change that split by itself. My stomach dropped a little, because Yvette was the big earner now, and I had cut my shop back to raise our kids, and 50-50 did not feel like justice when I had been the one holding the home together while she flew. But then he told me the parts that mattered, and there were 3 of them, and I want you to hear them. The first, he said that in Louisiana, adultery is a real fault ground, and that proving it lets a man get his divorce right now, without the long separation the no-fault road requires. No year of limbo. The truth, proven, opens the door immediately. The second, and this was the one that straightened my spine, he said that here, a spouse who is at fault in the breakup, a spouse who committed adultery before the filing, is barred from receiving final spousal support. He said it plain. She is the higher earner, so support may not have come up anyway. But understand this, he said. In this state, she cannot turn around and claim you owe her support for the years she was off building that career, because the law does not pay a cheating spouse to be supported by the one she cheated on. Her own conduct closes that door. And the third? He said that all that community money she had been spending out there on the road, the hotels that were not where she said, the dinners, the gifts, whatever had been poured into the affair over 2 years, that was community money, our money, and that the law lets me ask to be paid back my share of every dollar of it that went to her paramour. Reimbursement, he called it. He said, go find it, all of it, document every cent, because the more of our money I could prove she spent on him, the more of what was left came back to me. Then he gave me the rules, the same rules I would give you no matter where you live. Do not move out of the house, because the day you leave, you have written the story of who walked away from this family. Do not empty the accounts in a rage. Do not confront her, because the second she knows you know, the records get cleaned, and the stories get straight, and her lawyer gets to work. Document everything. And there was one more, particular to me. He said, that shop behind your house, did you have it before you married her? I said I did. Built it with my own hands the year before the wedding. He said, then keep every paper that proves it, because if you owned it before her and never folded it into the marriage, It may be yours alone, separate property, and not part of the pot at all. So I went home, and I became an actor. I did not know a quiet man had in him. For 2 years she had played the devoted traveling wife. Now, it was my turn to play the proud, oblivious husband for just a little while longer. I asked about her trips. I said I was glad the company kept her so busy. I held the home together exactly as I had. And every night after the kids were down, I went out to the shop and I built the only thing that mattered now, which was the case. I have joined 2 boards so true you cannot find the seam with your fingernail. Nothing I ever made took the patience of smiling across the supper table at a woman whose whole story I had finally read. And I dug. I went back through 2 years of our accounts with clear eyes. The joint statements that came to both our names. And the affair was all over them, once I knew to look. The hotels charged on the nights she said she was in cities she was not in. The one that stopped my breath. A hotel 20 minutes from our own house. On a night she had told me she was 3 states away. The dinners. The gifts from a men's store. A weekend at a resort I was never at. It came to better than $19,000 of our money. My kids' college money. Spent on a man named Lance who, it turned out, was a regional director 2 rungs above her. A married man with a family of his own 3 parishes over. By the time I was done, I had the whole 2 years laid out flat on my workbench. Every dollar. The way I lay out a cut list before a big build. My lawyer looked at it and said, "Plain, this is the part the law was written for." The work of it taught me something I want to pass to you. I did not need anything she had hidden on her phone. I did not need to break into a single thing. It was all sitting in our own joint records, the statements that came to both our names. Because money that pays for a secret life still leaves a public footprint on the family ledger. A hotel charge does not know it is part of an affair. It just sits there on the statement, dated and stamped, waiting for a husband to finally read it with his eyes open instead of his hopes open. I read like a man reading a cut list, no feeling, just numbers and dates, matching each charge against where she had told me she was. And every mismatch was a fence post in a line the court would have to respect. You do not need to play detective. You need to read your own books honestly, which is the one thing love had kept me from doing for 2 years. And through all of it, I kept the kids out of the ugly part, which was the hardest discipline of all, because I was the only parent in the house and there was no one to hand the weight to. They knew something was wrong, of course. You cannot hide a marriage cracking from a 16-year-old. But they never heard me run their mother down, never saw the box of statements, never carried 1 ounce of the grown-up weight. When my daughter asked, scared, if she had done something, I held her and told her the truth, that grown-ups make grown-up choices and not one piece of this was hers. When my son got angry and quiet, I let him, and I just kept being there, pancakes and pick up and catch in the yard, because steady is proven by repetition. And here is the quiet mercy in it. Because I had been the one home for 2 years, my kids barely felt the ground move. Their daily life, the one their mother had been absent from while she traveled, did not change much at all. Because the parent who ran it was still running it. The very thing her lawyer would later use against me, my being the one home, turned out to be the thing that kept my children steady when their world should have come apart. I kept all of it off the house, locked in the shop in a box only I had the key to. And I learned how careful I had to be. One night I had the statements out on the workbench when Yvette came out to bring me coffee, which she had not done in a year. And I had just enough time to lay a sheet of plywood over the papers and pick up a chisel like I was working. She asked what I was building so late. I told her a jewelry box for our daughter, which a man can say at any hour and be believed, and which I did in fact then have to build, and my girl has it still. After that, the papers lived in a bank box, off the property. Keep your proof where your own house cannot reach it. That is not paranoia. That is just keeping your good lumber out of the weather. Here is the part where it nearly went sideways, and I want every man who held down a home so his wife could rise to hear it. When it all came open, Yvette's lawyer did exactly what I should have expected. They tried to flip the whole story. They painted me as the small man who resented his wife's success, the jealous husband who could not stand that she made more, who kept her down with his little cabinet shop and his old-fashioned ideas. They came after half of everything as community property, which the law gave them a real claim to. And worse, they reached for the shop, my shop, arguing that 21 years of marriage and some marital money spent on tools over the years had turned my separate property into part of the pot. There was a stretch of weeks where it genuinely looked like the woman who had cheated on me for 2 years on our family's money might walk away with half of everything I had and a piece of the shop my own hands had built. And I lay awake on more than one of those nights with a particular kind of sick. The sick of a man who did everything right and watched the law look like it might reward the one who did everything wrong. I want to sit on that flip for a second, because it is the cruelest trick they run on a good man, and you need to see it coming. The story they told was almost clever, because it took every decent thing I had done and turned it inside out. My pride in her career became jealousy of it. My cutting back the shop to raise the kids became me being a low earner who needed her. My being old-fashioned enough to want my wife on my arm at her functions became controlling. They took a man who had given 2 years of his life to lift his wife up, and they tried to make him sound like a stone she had been dragging. And for a few weeks it scared me, because a lie told confidently in a courtroom has a way of looking like truth. And I am not a man with smooth words. I am a man with rough hands. I started to doubt myself. Started to wonder if maybe I had been small. If maybe wanting my wife to come home was the same as holding her back. That is what the flip is designed to do. It is designed to make the faithful one question his own faithfulness. What saved me from it was not arguing back louder. It was the record. The boring, undeniable record of who had actually been raising those kids and where her money had actually gone. Because the truth does not need to raise its voice when it has the receipts. What turned it was not a clever trick. It was the boring, patient truth, documented. The reimbursement claim held because I had every dollar of that $19,000 laid out, and the court treated our money spent on Lance as money she had already taken, and that came back to my side. Her own adultery, proven, barred her from claiming any support from me, so the story that I owed her for holding her back fell apart, because the law does not pay a cheating spouse to be kept. And the shop held because I had the papers proving I built it before her and never folded it into the marriage, and a careful tracing kept it separate and mine. Where the property was genuinely shared, I let her have her fair half, because I am not a thief, and the law is not a club for taking what is not yours. But the picture her lawyer painted of a jealous little man who held a great woman back did not survive contact with the truth, which was a man who had cut back his own livelihood and raised 2 kids largely alone so that his wife could chase a career she used, in the end, to chase another man. And Lance, here is the part that tells you what a man like that is made of. The day it became real, the day there was a divorce and a paper trail and his own name in it, Lance did exactly what men like him do. He went home to the wife he had never actually intended to leave, 3 parishes over, and he let my wife stand alone in the wreckage of the life she had blown up. He had a family, and a career, and a reputation he wanted to keep. And Yvette had only ever been the excitement on the road. The thing that happened away from his real life. The minute the road life met the real world, he chose his real world, and she was not in it. She learned, the hard and bitter way, that the man she traded a devoted husband and a whole family for had never once planned to catch her. That is its own justice, and I never lifted a hand to build it. The truth just lets people be exactly what they always were, once the lights come on. I heard, the way you hear things, that there was fallout at the company too. That two people in the same chain of command carrying on like that does not stay a private matter once it is a public divorce filing. And that Lance's careful, important career took a quieter turn after. I took no joy in it. A man does not have to celebrate karma to recognize it. I just noted, the way I note the weather, that the smooth man with the big title turned out to be exactly as solid as a drawer front with no joinery behind it. All face and no structure, and that the first real load had pulled the whole thing off in his hands. I had spent 30 years learning that you can hide bad work behind a pretty face only until weight comes on. Lance was bad work behind a pretty face. The weight came on. That is all. What came after, the law part, settled the way my lawyer said it might. The reimbursement claim held, because I had every dollar of that $19,000 laid out plain, and the court treated our money spent on Lance as money she had already taken, and that came back to my side of the ledger. Her own adultery, proven, barred her from claiming any final support from me. So the whole story that I owed her something for the years she said I held her back simply collapsed. Because the law in this state does not pay a cheating spouse to be kept by the one she cheated on. And the shop held, because I had the deed and the dated records proving I built it the year before our wedding and never folded it into the marriage. And a patient tracing kept it separate and mine. Where the property was genuinely shared, the things we truly built together. I let her have her fair half without a fight. Because I am not a thief, and the law is not a club for taking what is not yours. I did not want $1 that was hers. I only wanted to keep what was mine and what was my children's, and the truth, laid out plain, let me keep exactly that. I am not going to give you a scene where she came crawling back 6 months later, because that is not how this one went, and I would not dress it up if it were. What I will tell you is how it actually ended, which was quieter and meant more. The kids stayed with me. That was never really in question. Because the truth of who had been raising them was written in 2 years of school pickups and suppers and bedtimes that were mine, all mine, while she was on the road. Their mother sees them, and I have never said one hard word about her where they can hear it, and I never will, because they did not do anything, and a child gets to love a parent without the other one poisoning it. But the home that holds them is mine, the one I held the whole time, and that is as it should be. And the shop, I went back to it, after 2 years of cutting it back to hold the home together. I picked up my tools in earnest again, and it turned out the home did not need holding the way it had, because the woman I had been holding it for was gone, and the 2 kids who were left just needed their dad and his ordinary steady days. I build more now than I have in years. My boy comes out and works the wood with me some evenings, and he is good at it, better than I was at his age. Some nights I look at the 2 of us out there in the sawdust and the lamplight, and I understand that I did not lose my family in all this. I lost the one person who had decided to leave it. The family itself is right here, in the shop, in the house, in the kids who never went anywhere. There is a thing my father told me when he gave me the workbench I shook over that first night. And it took me 30 years and a split marriage to really understand it. He said, "Son, you cannot build something true out of bad wood, no matter how good your hands are. So the first job, before you ever pick up a tool, is to choose sound material." I had chosen my wood for the shop carefully my whole life, and never once thought to apply the same care to the life I was building. I do now. I do not say that bitter. I say it as a man who finally learned the lesson his own trade had been trying to teach him the whole time. That what you build is only ever as good as what you build it out of, and that a true man, a sound joint, an honest day, those are not small things. They are the only things, and they outlast every pretty face that ever splits under load. My kids are sound wood. This shop is sound wood. My own 2 hands are still sound. I lost a board I thought was true. I did not lose the craft, and I did not lose the things worth building. Here is what I have left for you, and then I will let you rest. The board can look dead straight and perfect, and have a split running down the grain inside it that you cannot see from any angle. You only find it when the load comes on, when you drive the screw, and then it splits the whole length in your hands. People are the same, and so are marriages. So learn to read the grain. Pay attention to the wood you are building your life out of, not with suspicion, but the way a craftsman respects his material. And if you ever drive the screw and find the split, do not throw the whole board across the shop in a rage. Set it down. Measure the damage end to end. Save what can be saved, the kids, the home, your own good name, and let the law and the plain truth cut away what cannot. You will build again. And what you build on sound wood will outlast everything that ever split on you. And if you are a man who held down the home so somebody else could fly, and it turned out you were holding the ladder she climbed to get away from you, hear me. Your support was not weakness, and it was not foolishness. It was love. And love given honestly is never the thing that shames you. The shame belongs to the one who took a good man's love and used it for an alibi. You keep your love. You just get wiser about where you lay it down. Be the kind of wood a person can build a life on. Some people will not know what that is worth until they have thrown it away. For a board that splits the first time it carries weight. Take care of yourselves out there. Read the grain. And tell me where you are watching from tonight. I read every single one.